Good evening, everybody. Can you all hear me okay? Yes. Beautiful. Thank you, Gene. You are the winner tonight. The first one to respond always wins. I've never yet come up with a prize, though, so don't get your hopes up too much. All right. I'll give it a minute just before we start. All right. So, good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here. I am Jeff. This is Intro to Buddhism and Meditation. We will start with joining palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha, and I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha, and keeping the palms joined. And you can put the palms down. All right, so nice to sit with you all this evening. Thanks for being here. I always like to start out with a question, just so we give time for everybody to settle in. Um, and what is my question today? I always make it up last minute. So, as a question for this evening, uh, let's start out with how are you at controlling your emotions? Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Um, no, I changed my question. How good are you at listening to people? I changed my question. How good are you at listening? So if you're joining us for the first time, there's a chat box on the screen there somewhere. And we'll just take the first couple minutes as people settle in. Um, and you can just share your thoughts there at how well you listen to people, regardless of who they are. You don't have to go into details if you don't like. Just are you able to listen? Are you filling your head with your own thoughts and your own judgments, or waiting to speak when they're speaking? Or can you actually just sit and listen to them without responding? It's something that, for me, I've always found in working with people for so many years, and I used to be really terrible at listening to people. Or as soon as they would say one thing, I'd already have my response ready in my head. And so it's something I've really had to work on over the years, which is basically just learning to be quiet, not just in speech, but actually quiet in the mind. And I found that meditation practice for many years, which has helped quiet the mind, has become a really beautiful practice for engaging in dialogue and engaging in conversation with people. Because if you can quiet the mind when you're in conversation, it allows you to just be with them on every word and not let the mind wander and race while they're speaking. So I think talking can be a really beautiful meditative practice where you're just incredibly present and kind of honoring um, their words and their space, and whether you agree or disagree, or you're arguing, or you're having a friendly conversation, whatever it might be, it's good to just listen. And I've found that some of the people that I've really admired and respected the most in my life are people who are incredible listeners, and they'll just hear you. So, all right, some responses. Not as good as I could be, right? Not the greatest, and it is a skill I'm constantly working on. Meditation has been helping. I'm learning to just listen. It's a challenge. I catch myself thinking or formulating a reply. 7.8 out of 10. That's not, that's a C plus, I guess. I could be better, but I'm more regularly catching myself when I'm working on a response and setting that aside while I listen. Yeah, these are good things to, I think, kind of ask yourself and reflect on that. When you talk about Buddhism, the two wings of the practice being wisdom and compassion. And I think of listening as something that's incredibly wise to do. Uh, at least that's how I translated in one way what wisdom would be in my life. And often we might think that wisdom, or uh, a word like that, has something to do with your own intelligence or your own knowledge to see things or understand things clearly. And for me, that really stems from just being able to listen to people. I think it's a really wise practice to just listen and not judge. Try not to judge. Again, really difficult to do, but something that is a beautiful practice and we can continue to work on. So, all right. So, with that, I think we'll start with the meditation practice. For those who are joining us for the first time, a couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. And the mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working? Is it not working? Am I doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos and sounds, and this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of that. So, posture, you just want to be comfortable, trying to really sit up straight, whatever you're on. If you're on a chair, or cushion, or maybe a couch, whatever you're sitting on, it's important that you're kind of upright, shoulders are relaxed, hands can be on the knees or in the lap. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And you can now practice really just listening to your own thoughts, watching them pass, and return to breath. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open, mouth open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually, we'll settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Going throughout the practice, you'll hear sounds inside the room, outside. These are not distractions, not disruptions, simply what's happening around us as we sit. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Gently guide the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. And simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. And where's your mind? Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in, breathing out, follow breath out. Letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments from the practice, just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation, yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Breathing in, follow breath in, breathing out, follow breath out. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe, knowing with each breath there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing, and once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly, And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. Most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being no different than anyone else. He began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where we come from or what we believe in or where we think we're going, our whole life is filled with things that happen. We react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. Not an easy practice, not a fun practice. Simply sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everyone else you encounter on a day-to-day basis. Meditation is free, Buddhist practice is free. Sit, breathe, become aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. That's it. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. So I had talked on, say it's Tuesday, on Saturday, and I mentioned how Monday I was doing a talk for Yom Kippur at the Jewish temple that I grew up at, and they'd asked me to come and lead a meditation and discussion. And so I chose, as I mentioned on Tuesday, I chose really the topic of forgiveness, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. In the Jewish tradition, it's the day that you ask God for forgiveness, and then God makes the decision and kind of seals your fate for the year. So I talked about as a kid how, when you're 10 years old and you think you get to go to temple and just ask God to forgive you, and it's that simple. I remember thinking, man, this is great. I can ask for forgiveness and then I'm free for the whole year, right? Again, as a 10-year-old. And then I'm kind of retelling what I talked about on Monday, but I just think it's interesting. And then as I got a little bit older, I realized, okay, well, what about forgiveness from others? I want others to forgive me for things I've done wrong also. This very human element of wanting forgiveness from people I'd harmed. So I kind of stayed in that world for a while, and then really a lot through exploration of this thing I call self and Buddhist teachings. I eventually got to this place where I realized I had to forgive myself. And so I talked a lot about that on Monday, how we go from, or how I went from asking God for forgiveness to wanting my friends to forgive me to then realizing I had to forgive myself. And then what I realized was I was asking for forgiveness because I was doing stupid things. And I thought, okay, well, I can spend my whole life doing stupid things and asking for forgiveness, or I can just stop doing stupid things. And that's tough. That's really tough because when you're someone like me who's majority of his life he did stupid things, it's really hard to not do stupid things. And I know a lot of people who maybe meet me later, met me later in life. You just don't know what it was like for me growing up and what I was like, I should say. I mean, what it was like for me was perfect. I lived in kind of this fairy tale world for the most part, but for me, I made it hell from the choices I made. So I had to get to a place where I forgave myself, but where I also, and through Buddhist practice, and as I always say, think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds. If I could get to a place where all I did was think good thoughts, speak good words, and do good deeds, I would stop harming people. And if I stopped harming people, I would stop having to ask for forgiveness. And like I already said, that's really difficult. And I found it to be the most difficult with people you know and love. Um, this idea of wanting to purify your mind and purify your thoughts is really challenging. So it's a practice. Um, Forgiveness is a beautiful, uh, really beautiful place to live at. But I think more importantly is to continue to, as the Buddha said before he died, strive on with diligence with this practice and ultimately get to a place where you're not doing things anymore that require people to forgive you. So, um, still a work in progress, but daily awareness of it. So, with that, again, if you are joining us for the first time, welcome. I always like to really leave the rest of the time just for questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's on your mind that I can address, and we'll go from there. So if you have a question, feel free to just type it in on the screen there, and I'll respond. Or any thoughts around forgiveness or doing stupid things or meditation. You're welcome, Vicky. Amitofo. Namo Amita Hut. It's funny because years ago, uh, and I would often ask at the start of almost every other time, if not every time, I would ask at the start of the classes I'd lead, why are you here? And just for people to reflect on what brings them to meditation or to learn about Buddhism. And I always would tell the story about how years ago, and this was, I think it was at Buddha for You when you said it. And Vicky said, Jeff basically says the same thing every single time, which is true. I've been doing that for about 13 years now. Uh, and you said, but I need the reminders. And I've told that story a lot, sometimes when you're here and you reference it, and sometimes a lot when you're not there. But it's always, I always enjoy it because it's, for me, a big part of why I started leading classes, which is it's constant reminders for myself as well. And so I think the reminders to be kind and gentle to self and forgive ourselves and to work on, letting go and non-attachment, Um, these things are really difficult. I mean, the things the Buddha was talking about are really hard to do, a lot of them. And we need the reminders. So uh, you are welcome for the reminder. Still true, still necessary. Yes. Other thoughts, questions? How are you all at forgiving the self? Something to reflect on and to explore in your life. Questions? What's on your mind? Curious about the word grace and if how that shows up in Buddhist philosophy. Um, I think Kelly, uh, I guess I'd have to ask you, uh, what does the word grace mean to you? Uh, specifically, the Buddhist teachings don't necessarily refer to grace, the word at all, but my sense is there may be a meaning behind the word that you have that may be applicable or may relate to something in the Buddhist teachings. So I would need to know more about uh, how the word grace has shown up in your life and what it means to you, and then I can address it. So feel free to type that out if you'd like. Um, Gene, yeah, definitely forgiving the self is more challenging than forgiving others. Um, that was the main topic of discussion on Monday, that we tend to, for whatever reason, hold this bar so high of how we expect ourselves to be, and we've been our own worst enemy and our own worst critic and our own worst, you know, judgers of ourselves for so long. So it's time to kind of set that down a bit. I have a hard time defining it, to be honest. I relate it to forgiveness and compassion. Well, I think that, starting with compassion, if you look at how is compassion, where does it show up in Buddhist philosophy? It is the core of Buddhist philosophy. Uh, it's the two words that really are often expressed as the wings of Buddhism. The two wings are wisdom and compassion, and these represent, and in Buddhist iconography and in bodhisattvas, as they're called, enlightened beings, there's the bodhisattva Manjushri, and in Tibetan Buddhism, you see him holding the sword um, in more of a Chinese Buddhist style. You'll see him on a lion that he has tamed. But wisdom is a core tenet in the Buddhist teachings on one hand, and the other hand is the compassion. And my first Zen master, we argued one time, and I accused her of having all wisdom and no compassion, and she accused me of having all compassion and no wisdom. And she was right. uh, but the idea of compassion is that we cultivate, I feel, this sense of complete understanding for other people's pain and suffering. And I think this is one of the most beautiful things we can do, is begin to understand that anytime anyone has harmed us or harmed themselves or done anything to harm anyone else, that they're suffering, and they're suffering deeply. And because of that, they act out. Just like us, when we do things that harm others, it's because we are suffering. We're in pain. Our emotions are destroying us. So to have compassion, to open the heart towards yourself and to others is critical. Without compassion, we're just filled with anger. And that's actually the second noble truth, which is the cause of suffering, is greed, anger, and ignorance. And the way we overcome compassion is with, or overcome anger, is with compassion. So I could go on and on about compassion, but it's probably one of the most commonly recited words um, with regards to Buddhist teachings. And it's compassion for all sentient beings. It's not just those we like. It's compassion for all the humans and all the animals and all the insects and all the bugs and all who are killed and slaughtered and destroyed for our benefit, for our gain. It's compassion for all of them. It's to understand that their pain is our pain, their suffering is our suffering, their joy is our joy, that there is no separation between us and them. This is compassion. So hopefully that's helpful. With regards to forgiveness, I touched on that a bit earlier, and I think that I'll share what my master taught me with regards to forgiveness, which was that when we look for forgiveness, to first recognize that the thing we did that caused pain and suffering we did without the Buddhist teachings in mind, without loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, without this feeling, we did things that caused harm. And the second, and so to recognize that, and the second step is to apologize if appropriate, and to ask for forgiveness. But again, only if appropriate. If I hurt somebody 25 years ago, they're probably over it by now. They don't want to hear from me just because I've had some grand awakening that says, I was a pain in the what, and I need to apologize. So the practice to me that I was taught was to turn to somebody or a friend and kind of apologize, referencing the individual that you harmed. And the third one is then to have a vow to not do the same thing again. So as I alluded to earlier, we can do things that harm others and we can apologize and ask for forgiveness. But the 10-year-old me thought, well, great, I got forgiveness now. Now I can go do whatever I want. So we'll often find ourselves doing the same thing, same patterns over and over and over again, harming the same people over and over and over again because we just can't stop doing it. So the vow, the very deep, strong vow, is to vow to stop doing what you're doing, which is causing harm. And therefore, there would be no need to ask for forgiveness anymore. So, Kelly, hopefully that's helpful. Uh, oh, yeah. Hi, Cynthia. Sorry, I think I paused for a minute. Um, Cynthia, uncertainty is the challenge these days. Lots and lots of good days till one day it wasn't. But falling apart isn't always a bad thing. Yeah, I mean, so much uncertainty. Y- a year ago there was a lot of uncertainty in our lives, and now it's become even greater. Um, so every day is uncertain, and within all of this uncertainty, I mean, I think Cynthia, just repeating, as you're not even asking a question here, but I'm just kind of echoing and honoring what you're saying, that yes, we have lots and lots of good days, lots of good moments, lots of good, hours. There's a lot of good things in your life and in the life of those around you. There's so much to be joyful and grateful for right now. Um, if all of us are sitting here with the ability to join some class at 7 o'clock at night or whatever time it is, wherever you are, uh, we have a lot of things in our life that are going really well that we should be grateful for. So, and then some days it collapses, um, as you so beautifully expressed in the emoji. And then when it falls apart, I remember what dear friends of ours years ago said to me, when something falls apart, like a plate that breaks, it shatters, but the most beautiful thing is you can pick up the pieces you want and move on. And I think that when things fall apart, it's really how we respond to them and how we interact. When we lose people and places that we love and things that we love, what is our response to that? Because as the Buddha taught, falling apart, in other words, the Buddhist word of impermanence comes to mind, is that everything will come together for a period of time and then cease to exist. So we are fortunate enough, we are blessed enough to have had the experience that we have. And when we lose it, that's part of life. And how we move on and how we respond to it is really the practice that we work on, which is moving on with a sense of uh, joy in our hearts and our minds as to what is next, what fell apart, what can we pick up, what pieces can we take, and what can we move on to. So, yes, Cynthia, thank you. Kelly, you're welcome. Marisa, when I fall prey to feeling sorry for myself, is the best way to overcome that with gratitude? I think so. I mean, it's tough to say what is the best way because I think that's going to change moment to moment. Um, Let me read the second part before I continue. And is feeling sorry for myself a function of greed because I'm clinging to wanting things to be different than they are? Um, well, at the risk of calling you ignorant, Marisa, who I know and love, it's actually ignorance. Uh, but let me go back to the first part. When you fall prey to feeling sorry for yourself, is the best way to overcome that with gratitude. It's definitely going to help. I think that there are moments that we try to find gratitude in something or someone or someplace, and it might just not be there. And that's why I try not to say something is the best way to do something, because there are times that, yes, definitely, when you feel sorry for yourself, gratitude will help 100%. Well, nothing 100%. It will often help. Um, if we can pause for a moment and recognize the wonderful experiences we've had, all the beauty that's in our life, uh, all the friends and all the stuff and all the, means um, to eat and to have a roof over our head and to have clothes to wear, uh, you know, again, to be able to connect online at 7 o'clock or, wherever you are, whatever time it is. Um, we have so much to be grateful for. So finding gratitude in all of these things, the challenge here is that we can have gratitude, but that doesn't mean it's going to um, change what we're feeling sorry about ourselves for. They're really isolated things. We feel sorry for ourselves about something over here. And then over there, we have gratitude. So what the gratitude is doing is it's not changing what's over here that you feel sorry for, but it's actually just kind of distracting yourself with gratitude. And hopefully what you're feeling sorry for will, slowly fade away. Um, and as far as the feeling sorry for yourself being a function of greed because you're clinging to wanting things to be different, I find that greed, to me, is more about, I mean, yes, you're correct. The reason I jump to ignorance is because for me, the way I look at greed is a wanting more, which also could be wanting different. And again, we're just semantics here, and you typed, two little lines on, you know, YouTube chat box. So if it's a discussion, it's easier. But wanting things to be different, wanting things more, uh, I find that when we want something to be different than it is, the ignorance is what comes to mind most because we're ignoring, and again, that's to me what ignorance in the Buddhist teachings, again, the cause of our suffering, greed, anger, ignorance, that the ignorance that we are experiencing is because we're ignoring the truth of what's happening. So you want things to be different than they are, but they're not. So you could say it's greedy because you want more or different or change, but to me, it's more about this is how it is. Uh, the Buddha had many names, how they referred to him, and one of them was Tathagata, and it means suchness, things as they are. And we're not very often we're not okay with things how they are. We want different, we want more. So I guess I backtrack in a bit and say yes, it's. I think there's definitely greed there, um, in wanting things to be different, but the ignorance one is tough because it's like we want something to be so different from how it is, and it's not, and it probably will never be. So the wisdom, which is how we overcome ignorance, and this is why I think for me the ignorance is more important in this aspect or in this kind of question and comment than the greed, because the way you overcome greed, as you know, is with generosity. So I don't know that generosity really addresses the nature of your question, but what overcomes ignorance is wisdom. And wisdom absolutely applies, because wisdom here is the wisdom to recognize that things are how they are, and that's it. And can we be okay with that? That's where I see the wisdom being applied is, can I embrace, acknowledge, accept, honor, be with this situation as it is? That requires a lot of wisdom and compassion. So hopefully that's helpful. Any other kind of last thoughts or questions before we wrap up here? Good questions. All right. Well, then I'm going to go ahead and close. We'll join palms. Very helpful. You're welcome. And we'll do a transfer of merit. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained be transferred to those who need it most at this time. So I'll just take a minute. Thank you for joining us here. It's a pleasure to sit with you all. I'm Jeff. I'm a Dharma Bum. We opened up the Dharma Bum Temple 14 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to local folks. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're just practitioners. And we do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Um, this practice, this path is not an easy one. It's a journey, and we do our best to be there for you as you go on your journey. Everything we do is free. All of our classes now, we closed March 12th due to the coronavirus. Everything we do is online. Just go to the website and click on the schedule. You'll see all our classes. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday, we're on YouTube, Alex, Travis, and myself. And then everything else we do is on Zoom, all the recovery classes, the teen group, the college group. So there's always something going on. I think that's all. If I never see you again, think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds. Again, that's the heart of this practice. So please be safe, stay home, wear a mask, do what you can to make sure we don't put anyone else at risk and in harm's way. So thank you all, much love, and I'll see you soon. Namo Amida Hut.